Originally planned, and I will try to finish this in within the time limit. Right. Okay, let me share here some of the biomedical applications and how we have worked in that environment. Look at this. This additive manufacturing process gives us a lot of opportunity to have the medical applications in that. Say, for example, educational video, hip dental implants, and then we have accurate evaluate and patient's anatomy, then pre-surgical planning video, and then reduce surgery time, try out different surgical approaches, and then we have the improved surgical outcomes, custom design of biomedical implants, then many trainings, etc., and tissue engineering. Very small portion of it I'm going to just share with you at this moment. So look at this, how we do the medical modeling processes, right? We have the CT scan and MRI data. So what we receive actually the 2D cross-sectional images like that, right? And you know, we have already discussed in the first session, we require the layered information. We are not at all interested in any tessellation or STL file if we directly have a slice data available to us, right? So look at this. This is the materialized software screen, and we cap the conversion based on the grayscale value and Hausen field values. So here we identify in the CT scan data, where is the blood vessel, where is the bone, or any other human anatomical parts are like this, right? So here you see, right? These things are there, right? Now look at this. Based on this, on different layers, we join together and we get this 3D computer model, right? And the next step to generate the support. So these are the support generations, and this is the stereolithography liquid-based technique physical model, right? So this is the overall process for medical modeling for 3D printing. And we require a lot of analysis to be done on different cross-sectional values. So a lot of programming is required here. Look at on this different, the femur bone is there for customized prosthesis implant. In this femur bone, the lot of cross-section for different peoples has to be performed, right? So different cross-sectional contour to be get, then this area might be calculated and different shape analysis to be done, right? And this is different for every human, right? So that cross-sectional analysis to be done for every patient separately, right? This is one of the classical example of surgical planning, right? One of the craniofacial reconstruction surgery, right? This is the craniofacial reconstruction surgery. So you see, these are the SLS models produced using the CT scan or MRI image. And look at this, this is the implant has been designed, okay? Here, this portion, the bone has to be implanted, right? This is another for surgical planning after the accident. There is no bone to support the ear portion, right? So this kind of implant has been designed to mount the artificial ear on the human face. Here the more on the CAD/CAM part, right? This is the CT scan data. This is the solid model of the skull has been created, and that is the fractured area, right? So it is very difficult to directly get it and then fabricate the prosthetic implant. So a lot of work can be done by the additive manufacturing. A lot of this is the mirror image, right? From this side portion has been taken on this side portion, and then Boolean operations. By Boolean operations, after mirroring this portion, we can identify this is the shape, right? And its geometric model, its STL model can be generated and sent back for the implant fabrication or implant manufacturing, right? So this saves lot of am I audible? I'm get a signal message here.
Yes, sir. Slightly it's cutting.
Sir, you're audible.
Okay. So here we see the lot of CAD operation to be performed. Look at this. This is very famous. You can Google it. Please allow me to take this call. It might be urgent.
Sure, sir.
Okay, no problem. Okay, please continue. Yeah, this is the conjoint twins surgery, very popular. You see, based on CT scan, MRI images, doctors have generated the stereolithographic models and did the lot of rehearsals before performing the actual surgery, right? So across the globe, 20 doctors have more than 20 doctors have collaborated for this surgery, and a lot of rehearsals, and they did that where is the blood vessel, bone, etc., different uh, veins like that, and then carefully they have to separate it out, right? So in this way, additive manufacturing helps a lot. Recently, we did the similar kind of work for Jabalpur Hospital and Research Center at Jabalpur, and this kind of contour generation application is already available in the MATLAB. So you look at this. This is your DICOM image, right? DICOM image which we received from the CT scan data and MRI data, right? And these are the different contours based on the grayscale or Hausenfeld value they are generated, right? So you can see the different contours are there with different color. This is based on the whatever the gray color, uniform gray color value, right? You look at this. This is the bright feature. This is the bone of the skull, right? You can see on the top. So different contours has been generated. You look at this. This is the bone portion, right? Okay. And now see this the display on isosurface with lighting, etc. means rendering, and the different slice are there, right? So this is all exercise we can do in the MATLAB. So this is the I was talking about. After the accident, the patient got damaged. This is the model I have shown you in the first session with the FDM part. This portion there is no bone to support the articulation. Eye is completely gone, but even there is no bone to support this, right? So with the CT scan images, this is the model earlier I have shown. We have created this model, right? And then now, based on Boolean operations, we have to calculate the exact boundary geometry by performing Boolean operation. We got this is the acrylic plate, right? Means this is the size for the implant to be created. Right? Look at this. After the surgery, this the portion surgery has been done. Implant has been implanted. Look at this, right? Can you see now there is a support available to place the eye. Here the role of additive manufacturing is to reduce the cycle time for this, for the development of implant. From weeks it has been done in days, right? from CT scan data, we have generated the exact size of the implant in the terms of acrylic plate, and this has been developed and implanted. Right. One of my student has done this project as well. Here you see in this there is a tumor because of that tobacco and etc. Right, tobacco. So with this tumor, doctors wanted to perform the surgery, and if you know, they have to put lot of clamps on this bone, and slowly they keep on putting the pressure or tension load on this by rotating some screws on this portion so that the osteocytosis of the bone, or in simple terms I would say the development of the new bone or growing of the new bone should be carried forward. So for this they want to have a lot of rehearsal, and for the design of the implant to maintain the uh, similarity of the human face, they have to do this, right? So for example, for this work, what we did, we have taken the CT scan images, find out this is the tumor portion, then we separated out this mandible, right? This is the mandible portion. So we separate out this mandible, right? And now I will tell you how we created this, the fresh without tumor mandible, right? So from CT scan data, we have taken to the Magix, and here you can see, you can clearly identify this the tumor portion, right? On the bottom side, right? This is the portion you can see the tumor, right? Look at this, what we did, we separated from the skull, we cut the diseased portion and mirror the STL. And here initially we are talking about the STL files. You may require those who are interested one full session to talk about the STL manipulation, right? So here from the STL manipulation, we have mirrored it, then added the STL file, and you can see this is the new STL, this is the old STL, right? And after a lot of operations manually doing in the software, we created the new mandible, right? So you see, this is the tumor portion, and this is the new mandible, right? So you see this portion is removed, and here the new bone has been fitted, and a lot of touching operations need to be done, manual stitching need to be done, noise cells to be removed, degenerate faces and bad edges to be removed, so that this should be printable, because it's not that simple you write something in your MS Word and ask your HP printer to give me a printout on A4 size, right? Those who are doing the 3D printing, they can understanding many a times it gives so many error that contour is incomplete or open, because your STL file is required the completely closed volume, right? It cannot have any holes or puncture or anything like, right? So, and after that, we have printed it, and then we have found it out like that, the STL file of the mandible, which is imported in the flash print software of our machine. And you see, this is print with the tumor, and this is without the tumor, the new we have created. So doctors are now knowing that this kind of operation they have to perform. This is the portion to cut, and here the new implant has to be implanted, and the screws can be mounted here and here to give the tension force on this side like this. So lot of surgical planning can be done based on these 3D models, right? Because we are engineer, we can open our car or scooter or any engine and can go for the lunch. Doctors can't avail that facility. That once they started the surgery, they have to finish it, right? So these kind of things will reduce the time of the surgery, and a lot of easiness they will provide to the doctors, right? So this require a lot of programming, lot of STL understanding before creating such models, right? Now look at this. If you have any questions at this level, please ask before I share another story of anyone.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Dr. Ruchi Kolia. I'm working in Footwear Design and Development Institute, and I'm a faculty of fashion design. So my question is that can we use the same machineries for producing the fashion-related products like accessories, footwears, and all, or do we require a different set of machineries?
Madam, can you little bit more elaborate your question?
So my
Same
question is,
machine.
can we use the same machine that you have used for this medical purpose for some other purposes, like for fashion products, like footwears or some accessories?
Yes. Right now, what product I have shown, it is a polymer product. So that cannot be used as an implant. This is just a replica of human anatomical parts. It cannot be directly used because we use for implants in a titanium. So titanium also people are using in a metal additive manufacturing. People are making, let me go back. For example, titanium screws, which people use for. Look at this. Small features are created using titanium, but here the people use 20 micron size powder, not the polymer. So it's a different equipment, different machinery, and it's a very costly. Normally, it's more than 6-7 crore setup. And look at this, the titanium screw which we use for biomedical applications like it here. So suppose we heard na that the एक rod डाल दी पैर में या नया कोई bio implant डाला. For
Yes.
tightening, we use this kind of titanium screws. And the requirement is that tissues should pass through these titanium screws, right? So you see the through holes in that, right? That is not possible by and without with any other technology, even with the wire EDM. You see here in the horizontal holes, you can see these horizontal holes are also through holes, right? These are interconnected pores so that tissues can pass through in it. That's the requirement. So it's a certainly different setup if we talk about biomedical. But if just we are printing a simple human anatomical replica, then it's okay. I used to have a lot of printout at my home for my nameplate, for my phone stand, or something else, right? So in the same way, we can have this kind of go back. Yeah, how, my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if no more questions, let me move. Let me share another story. This is my one of the MTech student. He is having his own company at Nagpur, and he developed this temporal bone. The problem with temporal bone, it is right, and it's very quickly get dissolved in the human body after the death. So this is normally not available for doctors for the dissection purpose or the training purpose, you can say, right? So based on this, you see what he developed the bone, because we have discussed a lot about that the material properties will depend on the process parameters. So what he did, he tried to fabricate the bone with the polymer material and the mechanical properties very much close to the bone, so that doctors can perform the dissection on those bones. So they are available for doctors training, right? Look at this. He developed the geometric model based on the CT scan data. You see here, that is the scan, and here the ear portion he has removed out, right? The challenge was that in this, the features are very mixtures, means same kind of Hausenfeld value or the binary image gray value are there. So identification of the features in this portion is very difficult, because this is also black color, this is also black color, this is also black color. But very carefully, the feature recognition has to be done in this portion, so that this temporal bone can be identified, right, from here. And look at that, once this bone is identified, this is the shape of the bone in the CAD model, STL file, right? And you see this is the polymer bone and this is the actual bone, right? in the different angle you can see. This is the same geometry he produces. And now he is exporting these bones in Saudi Arabia because there is more problem. They don't have the body. Even in India, doctors can't get the human body donated for this study purpose. Saudi Arabia, he is used to sell a lot of this kind of bone, right? So you see the FDM process is there, and this is the bone, which is very, very close to the, in terms of mechanical property, to the actual bone, right? So this is another case. Recently, one of my PhD student has did lot of work in guided endodontics. A small portion of it I am showing here. In root canal treatment, we all know, right? Doctors have to use the X-ray images that where the root is going, right? And very careful, based on their experience, they do the drilling operation in the teeth inside to cut the root canal. So what we did here, we taken the CBCT scan, and based on CBCT scan, we developed this geometric model of the tooth. In this case also, you can see here the cross section, the blue contours, right? That is the reason in the first session I talked about we should know our own programming algorithms, and we should be capable to get this kind of contour information, right? So look at this. Here we need to calculate the intersection point, sorting the intersection point, and construct a two-dimensional contour. You can see here, this is the two-dimensional contour, and you see here some internal contour, some external contour, right? That is the reason I was talking in the first session about this contour. Based on this contour, we find out the centroid for contour, right? So this is the inner contour shape you can see I have identified. And this is the, based on centroid, we have planned the path, right, in three-dimensional space, right? So these are the ZX view and YZ view of root canal, right? So based on the slice model, now what is happening? Direction of the root canal is known to us, right? So once we know this direction of root canal, we develop a guide or jig, just like our mechanical, right? So here what is happening? The Boolean operation is performed with the tooth. So the inner shape of this cylinder is the opposite part of this tooth, right? So this is the CAD model of jig, and this is the direction of the root canal. So here in the CAD model, we already created a hole for the drilling burr used by the dentist, right? So this direction is known. Now in this direction, this is the drill burr hole is created. Now on this tooth, there is a jig has been created. So this jig has been mounted on the human tooth. This is the validation of the experiment. So on the ceramic blocks, the tooth has been mounted. And here the guide of this by ABS material. On the top, there is a hole. And when doctors drill the hole into that, right? So this is the X-ray images after the healing, right? So this is the validation, how we perform this study. And this is a small part of a PhD thesis of Dr. Ankit Nayak. Right. Now look at this. Another interesting applications, right? For 3D image printing we have done, right? So you see here, we have the RGB image. We can convert this to the grayscale images, right? You know RGB when we have the color, and the grayscale images. Here we have the three colors from 0 to 255. So total 256 values for red, for green, for blue, right? Based on this, we make the color images, right? Then we convert it to grayscale image by averaging all these three. So we will get 0. Suppose I convert this into the binary images. What is going to happen, right? If I convert this into the binary image, I will get only 0 and 1.
So it will be a black and white image.
Yes, yes, perfectly right. It would be a black and white image. And if I talk about the values, what it will have? It will have 0 and 1. Right? We will have 0 and 1 value. right? So you look at this, what we did in this study of 3D printing. Since we are meeting virtually, I cannot show you many models which we have created based on this method, right? So RGB, grayscale, and what we did, we converted this into the point cloud data. Based on the grayscale value, we have added the third axis to the pixel, right? Pixel have the XY value, and now we have given it to the Z axis, right? So you see this image has been converted into the stair steps. You can see like this, right? Then we have converted this into the, based on this point cloud data, into a STL file, writing the STL file from the pixels, right? Then we have the nozzle path, right? Look at this RGB image, RGB to grayscale image, and this is the image STL, and this is with the nozzle path, and on the bottom side you can see this is the picture printed, right? So you can see here, this is the shape we can get, right? So this is the part how we correlate with the image processing to the 3D printing, and it's a completely interdisciplinary part, right? Lot of biomedical applications, doctors to be involved, programming required, lot of electronic circuitry required if you want to develop some your own setup. Now look at this. I have talked about the adaptive slicing in the first session, right? See on this screen, can you identify where is the cusp height, where is the layer thickness, where is the region, and how much volumetric loss it will take place? Look at this here. Even though cusp height for this position and this position would be same, but see, lot of volume loss is here compared to this position. So if I can have another layer in between this like this, what will happen? This situation will become like this, right? So I can reduce the layer thickness in this region, right? And I can increase the layer thickness in this region. So no problem like that, right? So this is the idea in this work. Right? So this is the adaptive slicing for the cusp height, right? Many people have attempted, but here what is happening? The cusp height does not have the control on the volumetric error. So this adaptive slicing has been done based on the volumetric error. Look at this. If suppose this is the part, this is the uniform slicing. Right? This is the uniform slicing, and you see where the curvature has occurred. So here you see the layer thickness has been reduced. Here again the curvature on this part is there, so layer thickness has been reduced, right? And this is some analysis part, the part height with Z direction, how the variation in layer thickness occur, where the curvature occur, the layer thickness has been reduced, right? Here again the layer thickness has been reduced on the top portion, right? And here the volumetric error occurs wherever you see this layer thickness has changed, where is the only the major layer thickness, volumetric loss. Since this is a vertical part, so no layer thickness will occur, right? You can clearly see the layer thickness change in this portion and in this portion, right? And on the upper part, you see the uniform layer thickness has been. Now see another problem I have discussed with the deviation and allowances, right? This is for the containment problem. Look at this. If I have this kind of situation, bottom up slicing procedure, what is going to happen? If you have any question at this moment, please, yeah, take a 1 minute break. If you have any question, any observation at this moment, please share.
So for changing the thickness, what
Yeah.
would be the procedure?
If you calculate say for example, previous slide, let me go here, right? If you identify here the volumetric loss is higher and you said that no, volumetric loss cannot be go beyond this, right? Say for example, here I have said that volumetric error bound should be 0.70 millimeter cube. So if volumetric loss is higher, then what you will propose? This layer height should be less, right? So if layer thickness is reduced in this area, you have to tell it to your system, right? That here the volumetric loss is, suppose I say 5, right? Then you want it to be 4. Then you should recalculate, reprogram, and with reverse calculation, you should know if I reduce this layer thickness up to this point, my volumetric error would be within the 4 millimeter cube, right? So layer thickness here, say for example, I would say 200 micron, but here you can say it is 175 micron, right? The next challenge is with the machine. That machine should be capable to change the layer thickness. Right now, whatever the commercial machine we get, they are not capable to change the layer thickness. Here the research lies. Can we change the layer thickness on the machine, or can we modify or retrofit any machine which can change the layer thickness? Right? If machine can change the layer thickness, then also we have to control other process parameters so that the polymer material to be deposited in that area and layer should be completely filled. Yeah, you are saying something?
So that's it. I thought nozzle to be changed or something like that.
Yes. That is the point. Na? That is the reason. Suppose instead of 200 micron, you said 175 micron. You can manage it by moving at faster rate, right? Or suppose you are saying 200 to 100 micron. This is not possible. In that case, you need to change the nozzle. So what people are trying to have the multiple nozzles. So suppose you laser and this also in a form of a modular form, means you can't say that 200 micron would be changed to 175, but you can have something like the range of 50, like the layer thickness can be 100 micron, 150 micron, or 200 micron, right? So you can have a 3 different nozzle on your machine. You can program like that. If layer thickness is 100 micron, now this nozzle will execute, right? 150 micron, another nozzle, 100 200 different nozzle, right? So that can be taken care. A lot of research is going on then how to do the adaptive slicing. A complete topic is open for this.
Thank you, sir.
Now look at this.
Optimization of these parameters.
Look at this for shape deviation and allowances. What is happen if I start slicing from the bottom and extrude it towards the up? What is going to happen? Look at this. See, I have started from the bottom, so that bottom portion, this part is undersized. But on the upper port, the green color part is going outside the required. Look at it. If I reverse the cycle and start from the top down. Now I will take the cut from the top. So you see this is the intersection point, and now I will extrude it to the down, right? Look at this. Got it? So what has happened you see in this case? Upper portion is undercut, undersized. Green color portion you can see the bottom size is oversized. That was the problem I discussed in the issues and challenges first session, right? Look at this. If we adopt this kind of positioning, lower portion in this way, upper portion in this way, right? But that is not that much simple. What I can see on the screen, you can have any complex part which may not fit in this situation, right? The part geometry is like that. On one side, if you have underside, on the other side, you may have the oversized part. But for any post-processing operation, you want that either it should be uniformly oversized or it should be uniformly undersized, so that you can do the grinding, polishing, or any other method of doing this, right? So look at this. In this way, this part is completely outside, right? Now, what we did for this to address this problem, we do a lot of slicing, identify how to find out the shape. But look at this in this case. Suppose this is the geometry. Now, so this is the slicing. Got it? What has happened? On this side it is oversized, on this side it is undersized. So what we did here, we have taken, let us see again. Now we have taken two layers, C1, C2. What we did, we merged them. We performed the Boolean operation and then extruded. Look at this, the result is both sides we got the oversized part. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Now look at this, you require a lot of programming understanding at this stage. Because unless you have this contour in your hand, right, you can't do this. So you have to do the slicing by your own, finding out these two contours, merging them, and then you have to perform the Boolean operation on these two contours, right? So what we did for implementation of this, we wrote a macro in a SolidWorks. This is the SolidWorks screen you can see. This is the sample part we have taken. In this blue color zone, it is a equal size contour. On this green color zone, you see it is a oversized contour. On this red color, it is a undersized contour. And this blue color, it is a mixed size, means one side undersized, one other side oversized, right? So we have the first contour, second contour, like nth contour, right? So what we did, we have taken this contour in a SolidWorks, extruded. This is the second contour, extruded, third contour, intruded, and convert this into the STL model, right? So this is the part we got in the simulated geometric model, right? Look at this. This portion, when we applied this superposition of model and then see this magnified picture, you see this portion, right? Can you see? This side as well, it is oversized, and this side as well, it is oversized. Otherwise, what would happen? One side it would be oversized and other side it would be undersized. So these kind of issues to address, you require a lot of programming techniques, right? I think let me check if the time permits. Okay. Okay, quickly let me share two more things. This is our CNC machines where we have developed the extruder head. So we can use the material in a pallet-based technique, right? Based on this pallet-based technique, we have here the electric heater, resistance heater. So with this heater, and there is a screw head inside this. You can see this is the screw head, right? With this screw head on the CNC machine, we mounted this as a tool on the milling machine. So this screw rotates. We keep it at 50 RPM. We fill the pellet-based material inside this, right? And then this is extruded, right? And from this heater, we kept it in a melting position, just like our FDM machine, right? And this screw rotates and puts the material inside this nozzle, right? In this extruder, heated extruder head, right? So this is coming out of the nozzle. And now we did the slicing by our own, and based on that slicing, we have generated the nozzle path, which I discussed in the first depositing, and you because it is our what we have discussed, it is taken in the form of contour as well. We can convert this into the raster as well, and all these things to be converted into the G&M code, right? So that's why the programming at our own part is required, right? Look at this again. Because this is the part of the DST sponsored one of the project where we develop the additive subtractive both on the same setup, right? This figure I might have shown you already. These are the some parts. Look at this. Here we are machining at the same component on the same setup on the same milling machine. So the extruder head was earlier the extruder head mounted as a tool, right? Now we have removed that tool and mounted a milling tool, right? So here the removal process is going on. Right? So you see in the same setup, we are capable to do the additive and subtractive both, right? And this is the software module we have developed completely so that we can assign the process parameter, road bed, then STL file import, we can generate the slicing, then toolpath, convert it to the G&M code, we can see here. So suppose this is the STL file, this is the contour information, this is the raster toolpath, and we can fully simulate it, right? And then this is the subtractive machining. From the same setup, we are capable to generate the G&M code, which we can upload on our CNC machine and which is capable to run this program, right? So you see that based on this, we perform the surface roughness analysis and you can see how smooth parts we can develop, right? This is the top surface of the part. Look at this when we do the machining, how this part looks like. So this is the hybrid subtractive additive machining. You see, this is the top surface machining, this is the profile machining, right? So let me run before I close. Let me run this MATLAB screen as well. Can you see this MATLAB screen?
Yes, sir.
Look at this. I'm running only one of the complex parts. This is the program to perform the slicing, right? Okay. So look at this. I can open any STL file. For your simplicity, let me open one simple file first. Let me open this pyramid STL file, right? So you can quickly understand. Now my program is what is the height of the snow. So let me say 45, right? Look at this. This would be the STL file for the pyramid. And you see this is the slicing done. So you see at 45 height, this plane is created and now we have the slicing done. So we have got here the 4 points, right? On 4 lines, right? And here the head and tail situation would like that. Now our task is to logically connect them. It's a very simple part so you can understand, right? And now the next step, it will connect and make a contour of it. Then we take it further for the toolpath generation. Right? You see the P1, P2, P3, P4 is the toolpath generated. Look at this. Let me show you a cube since we are talking a lot about a cube. I'm not going into much details of how this program or what the logic is working behind it. I just wanted to give you the glimpse why I'm giving so much emphasis on that. You see, this is the cube STL file, right? And you see, this is the head and tail situation. You see, intermediate lines are there, right? That is what I shown you in the very first 4 or 5 slides. Right now it will generate the contour by joining them in a logical sequence. Look at this. This is the P1, P2, P3, P4, P5 in a sequence, right? And now we use this contour information for the tool path generation for CNC machining, right? So we are not dependent on any 3D printer, commercial 3D printer or programming or any open source software or commercial software for this, right? This is all segment. Some other time, this details how we do this operations. What are the different algorithms to apply and perform this kind of operations, right? Let me go back and close this. Right, so we were here. This also allows us to produce the flexible parts, right? You all know in FDM process, you should have a wide spool. And if this spool is flexible, what is going to happen? It will buckle, right? So the machine will not be capable to insert or push it through the nozzle, right? For extrusion. So what we did on our developed CNC system, we used the palette of EVA material, right? So EVA material, what we normally wear our sleepers, chappals, right? That kind of flexible material, right? So that material, we did lot of experimentation with that, right? And we are capable of lot of synchronization, what we have talked in the first session, right? These are the figures I have shown, right? So based on that, we are capable to print the flexible parts like this, right? Look at this. See, these are the additive manufactured part, and they are so flexible. You look at this. Right, so you see these are the flexible parts we are capable to use because we have our own in-house developed system and capability of generating part programs. Fine. Right, so these are the issues. You can see here the EVA gives you elongation at break 300 to 800%, right? Tensile strength is less, but the point is the elongation at break to be achieved, right? Important thing is this, such kind of flexible parts are printed using FDM process, right? So some of the references are here, and I would like to thank and would like to end this session on time, not to take up your much time. If any few quick questions, you please ask, and
Thank
you
you,
can
sir.
go through my Google Scholar profile or this LinkedIn PKGen 2006 and Facebook PKGen 2006. You can find lot of articles, whatever I have shown you in the second session. This is our lab contribution, right? This is not any others work. This is all from my MTech and my PhD students. So you can read it, go through it, and for any query, we would be happy to address at any time. Yeah, Professor Suryavanshi, now it's over to you.